So the term for a Dharma talk here in Sri Lanka, I think, is the same as in India. It's a Dharma desana. It's like the delivery of Dharma. But with my friends here on the beach that look after my little private spot for me here, I asked them about this with monks here in Sri Lanka, and they explained that yes, they go to the temple, offer food, dana, and the monks eat, and then blah blah blah. So a Dharma desana or Dharma talk is a blah blah blah. So when I come here to do this, I just have to say blah blah blah, or they know I'm here for this purpose. So welcome, hello, and welcome to my blah 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 session for today, which I hope is not too much sampapalapa, which, as if you remember, is the Pali for idle chit-chat, useless talk. Not that there's anything wrong with that. There is a time and a place for making, let's say, what we call a little small talk about the weather or some conditions, just to break ice, to put people at ease, as I have just done, I suppose. But when we meet people in the street, we're not to be, the Buddha would ask, how are your travels? Do you have everything you need? Do you need anything to eat or drink? And how about your requisites? What needs replacing? So this kind of talk is to be kind to people. So we don't think, oh, we're austere practitioners and only speak about serious matters all of the time. So don't speak to me. In fact, vows of silence are against our monastic code of practice, our rules, our Vinaya. We are not allowed to take pure vows of silence. We can or should practice noble silence, which means we don't speak of matters that are irrelevant within the monastery or with our monastic family, our fellow bhikkhus, because it's unnecessary, but we don't also ignore the fact that we must discuss practical matters. So, for instance, pass me the chanting book or something like that. We don't try and mime, we speak. It's practical, it's useful, but only when necessary. So now it's necessary but also enjoyable for me to just talk about your comments and questions, the ones that I have received, catching up. And we will begin with, I think if I try and get a nice break between each question and even say the first question or the next question, please forgive me, but this, I think, enables YouTube as a machine, I don't think a person does it, to more quickly separate the questions in this automatic chaptering that they do of these talks. If that doesn't make sense, don't worry about it, it's not a problem. It makes sense to me, but I'm trying to speak more clearly. My New Year's resolution, let's say, it's got off to a rather slow start, but should have been to speak more clearly, on the understanding that I am more often than not speaking to people who English is not their mother tongue. Here, that is for sure, and on YouTube also. But for looking for questions later on and things, it's easier if you separate them a little. As someone who is looking into Buddhism, what translations of the suttas and the Dhammapada would you recommend? Thanks. Okay, with regards to the Dhammapada, now the Dhammapada is part of the additions to the Pali Canon, the additional books, but very, very valuable. You don't have to take it all entirely literally, but it's short verses taken from the suttas, a little out of context, but made to sound very nice, like little poems, little verses. So the Dhammapada and the Coincidentally, and I didn't know this, my copy is translated by, before I ordained, I had this copy, is translated by Acharya Buddharakhita. So Bhante Dhammarakkhita, who is the founder of the Mahabodhi Society Bangalore, with whom I ordained, my monastic family. So he is my grandfather monk, if you like, senior in lineage. He had died before I joined them, but a few years previously, so I didn't meet him. But his translation of the Dhammapada, and I'm not just saying this because of my association, is one of the most recommended and renowned, and the one I happened to have before I knew of him. So I'd recommend that one. If you just Google, in fact, you're asking me to recommend because maybe you feel, I think about particular translations. We all have different ideas of whom's a good teacher, whom translates things well or not. We don't all like the same things. So because I think it's good, that doesn't mean you should. It doesn't matter. We don't all pick the same looking kind of partner. We have different ideas of what we consider beauty. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We don't all like the same kind of music. We don't all read the same kind of books or watch the same kind of movies. And this is the same with the Dharma. Some translators will translate in a way that appeals to you more than others. So I'll gladly say that the usual would be that Bhante's, they call him in India Bada Bhante, so it's like big grandfather Bhante, because he's very renowned and famous. His translation, so that's Buddharakhita. So my name is Dhammarakkhita, so Buddharakhita and Dhammarakkhita is my name. So it's Rakhita after Buddha. My name is Rakhita after Dharma. There is a Sangha Rakhita, but we don't talk about him. He's dead anyway. And there's no connection, that's coincidence also. The Buddharakhita's translation of the Dhammapada is very easy to read, beautiful to read, and it is a beautiful thing to read and a very good start to Buddhist practice. And the suttas, well, I was reading them in book form as opposed to online at first, but now really you've got the world is your oyster. Find what you like. You've got somebody has answered your comment with exactly what I would say in regards to now online. So I won't go through that again, but needless to say, just quickly, you're suggesting Access to Insight's website, but I would also say Sutta Central for bits of the, when you know what you're looking for, to look something up. And then they have options for different translators even within that. But not to complicate it too much, Wisdom Publications. Now they are the modern day version of the Buddhist Publication Society, which was here in Sri Lanka, that published the first Dharma books that my country, England, received back in the sort of late Victorian times, in the times of Edwin Arnold and Anagarika Dharmapala from here, who revived Buddhism in India. But in modern day times, we find that there's a big publishing organization called Wisdom Publications, and there's another one also, or they're owned by a big publisher. But if you look up, Google Wisdom and Suttas, it'll come up with the Pali Canon, their version, and they're translated the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle length discourses, which is really where one begins. And that was my first book on the suttas that I read, but then pick from nowadays even on the online version, is translated by Bhikkhu Bodhi and Bhikkhu Nyananomoli. But just Google this and pick what you choose, what suits you, not what other people say is best, because it's really like music. We don't all have to like the same music. Just because someone says Beethoven is great, you might prefer Tchaikovsky. It's as simple as that. It's all music. The Dharma is pure music without the tune, yes? Harmony. Harmony with life. The truth. Harmonic truth. Oh, I've done something to the phone now with all that sampapalapa. What about the V8 and AC rooms some monks have? Did I leave a gap between the question? Possibly not. I rambled. This is what I must try mindfully not to do between questions. I'll have to read that one again. What about the V8 and AC rooms some monks have? Am I reading these in the wrong order? No, it doesn't matter. They're all separate questions. This, I think, though, may come from a short or a video with regards to renunciation. I'd imagine so. I can never really remember what I've said in these videos, so forgive me, but when you make comments sometimes I'm treating them as if they come from thin air. I'm not associating. Also, I don't see on here what video it's connected with, but this I think applies to renunciation. Well, what about it? I mean, I don't have. What's V8 anyway? I mean, is that a kind of engine? Is this like a big car? Maybe some monks, or actually, no monks have any of these things. The Sangha has these things. And there's another question. This is close together, so it must be on the same video. What about Sangha? I won't read that word because I think it's misprinted. In 5-star hotels in Bodh Gaya. These questions are completely from different people, but they must be related. So let me begin with that one. What about Sangha in 5-star hotels in Bodh Gaya? And let's assume you're talking about what I was talking about in terms of renunciation, leading a simple life. Okay, well, firstly, when I stay in Bodh Gaya, I'm very fortunate to be able to stay in our monastery. My Sangha has a monastery, a meditation centre in Bodh Gaya. But in fact, even that was full when I went for my ordination there in Bodh Gaya. And accommodation in Bodh Gaya, as with the other 3 holy places, Sarnath, Kushinagar, and in Lumbini in Nepal, is very difficult to get for monks or lay people. These are the meccas, the holy centres for Buddhism. So if you're a monk travelling to these places, if you're very fortunate like me, whom my upajjhaya, my preceptor, my ordaining monk, my superior, my big chief boss and CEO of our Sangha, if you like, he lives there and has his own monastery. So I have no problem, I can stay there. I'm so very lucky and fortunate, because this is a very difficult place to find accommodation for anybody. And when that was full, he has connections so I could stay at another monastery. So when I go to Bodh Gaya, I wouldn't be staying in a 5-star hotel. And in fact, since long before ordaining, have not ever stayed in a 5-star hotel. On one occasion, invited in India to go and do some ceremony thing or organisation, some program of events with another bhikkhu who was a samanera, not a bhikkhu, a monk, but a samanera. We went to this place and the people had put us in a hotel with nice rooms, not a 5-star, but a hotel. And I don't stay in hotels. And the reason is, in our Vinaya, there are certain places where we are allowed to stay and certain places that are inappropriate. But the main condition is we need to know whom's in the room next door, above us and below us, because we are supposed to be either living in a monastery with just other bhikkhus, other male monks, alone, outside, under a tree, in a cave, or in a wooden hut, a kuti, an abandoned empty building, as I always do. The problem with living in a hotel is not so much in your room, but if there's connecting rooms, or if you go out into the hallway for one reason or another, and for instance you're alone, and say there was a lady staying in the room next door and she went out into the hallway and the doors were then shut, I would be breaking rather, as a monk, a strict Vinaya rule, because I'd be in a room unaccompanied with a lady alone. Or like going in the lift, for instance. I never go in lifts because you don't know who's going to get in the lift. In the hospital the other day I had to go in the lift, so I didn't go in the lift. I said no, I'll go up the stairs, because if you get to the second floor and then a lady comes in, here I think they'd understand, but in a non-Buddhist country this is inappropriate to be alone in a room with a lady or a car. It's against our rules. It's the way we protect our Vinaya, keep our Sila. So this is why I wouldn't stay in a hotel. But now I must say, with this situation of accommodation in Bodh Gaya, and also with very senior monks who might be very old and have some illnesses and they're not very fit, they're getting old, they'll have they can't just go and sleep outside, in the streets like I would. If I couldn't get accommodation, I'd just go and sleep with the homeless people, no problem at all. But if you're a little bit, frail, you've got some illnesses and things, you need safe, comfortable accommodation. In that case, all of the Vinaya rules do have this caveat that in cases of ill health, there's some flexibility within reason to the rules. But saying that also, however, a senior monk of this caliber or nature that you might be referring to staying in a 5-star hotel has many upasakas and supporters whom would have established who's staying in the rooms next door. They would probably be male assistants, upasakas anyway, and they might have booked the whole floor out of lay people's money and funds in order that the monk whom is important to them has safe and comfortable accommodation. Now, he possibly wouldn't choose to have a big high luxury bed or air conditioning, but it's there, so he cannot be too fussy, and it's for a short period of time. More than a few nights, living in a situation like that, then possibly this needs to be, this is questionable. But for a short time and subject to age and illness and seniority, I think in those circumstances it's possibly, so I've never heard of it to be honest, but it's possibly that's something that's necessary. In my case, when I had to stay in this hotel on this just one occasion, I asked that they cancelled the second room next door, or what they did, they moved into the second room next door, one of the Upasaka men. I said he can have that room because he was going to share with somebody else. I will share with the Samanera, and I will sleep on the floor. He wanted the bed because he liked his comfort, but I don't. There was 2 beds, it was 2 singles, but I sleep on the floor. So I slept on the floor and had the windows open, which he wasn't keen on, but he's a Samanera, so I said, no, that's the way it is, and we didn't have any air conditioning on or anything like that. So I got around it that way, and the other room next door had also one of the parents of some function or wedding or something we went to perform or do a program at. So I checked it all out and then used the stairs, but it was only for one night, and I said next time you don't do that, we can even stay in your house, and it's easier to arrange things around that environment than you putting us in a hotel. So that's about hotels. Now about V8's, if you're referring to cars, well, they would be owned by the Sangha, and I think big or large Sanghas, my own, they have a car. I mean, there's 30 odd bhikkhus, and some of them are very senior bhikkhus of 30, 40 Vassas, whom have been monks with the same, in that same Sangha all of their lives, or a good part of their lives. And it's a very established, from the time of Acharya Buddharakhita's time in 1956. It has a very large and established community, and they have a car, not a luxury car, but a large car that's practical to carry at least 6 monks, so a few senior bhikkhus, and you could squeeze some samaneras in the boot, one of these little seats in the boot. So they have a car like that, and a little van, and a little runabout kind of old, we'd call it an old banger in England, just to go to the market, for the Kapias to go to the market and get vegetables. Now they have the very bare minimum of vehicular requirements for a very large organisation, which is a registered charity, has a lot of funding coming into it, and everything is organised in accordance with those charitable regulations, but of course also the Vinaya. These things do not belong to monks. We do not own anything other than our 8 requisites. I don't even own these phones. These are lent to me for this purpose. You paid for them as people who donate via PayPal on this site. Any contributions made that way build up, and there's sufficient. When the old phones that I started with this became unable to do this because they were dated and wore out and got too hot and wet and humid, I was able to replace them, or my Kapia at the time back in India was able to replace them quite cheaply there with the money that had built up in those funds. So like that, these are for your benefit, like the cars are for the benefit of the lay people to get the monks to their programs and occasions, but not always the case. I mean, more often than not, I don't have a car or any means of transport. I use public transport. If I have to go to the city, Colombo, I go on the bus, or if somebody offers me a lift, I'll take a lift. But I don't need a car. Most of the time I'd get around to anywhere I need to get around here in my Kapia, who is also a tuk-tuk driver, his tuk-tuk, which is a 3-wheeler scooter with a box on, if you can imagine the thing. So I think that's what the V8 means. And AC rooms some monks have. Yes, maybe even in monasteries, but again, I don't live in such a place. I wouldn't want to. I'm not keen on air conditioning. Fans at a push, because of only for the insects, but I like to have my windows and doors all open all of the time, all night, all day. And air conditioning doesn't work if you have your windows and doors open all of the time. It works by everything being sealed up. Unless you're referring to that in cars, I don't know. But certainly most monasteries, I've never stayed in a monastery that has air conditioning, or seen a monastery that's got air conditioning. I've been to many and stayed in many, and long time in many, and never seen that. But maybe in the car, yes, there might be some air conditioning. But I find that I'd rather that wasn't on, because then of course you're just putting off and making worse the dukkha, the suffering. You're nice and cool throughout your whole journey, and then you get out of we're dressed in parimandala, completely covered with our robes when we go anywhere. So we don't acclimatise. We acclimatise to the cool temperature of the car with the air conditioning on. Then when we get out to do our program of events, I just completely sweat like this and have a hot flush. I'd rather be hot all the way and get used to it, and then there's no transition. So again, excuse me, for me AC is not a thing, not a good thing, not a positive, put it that way. But yes, you cannot see, I don't know what you might see on YouTube, on the news, in papers, or what you might see when you go visiting different monasteries in Buddhist countries. There's so many different kinds of traditions and sanghas and monastery arrangements and temples. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the teachings of the Buddha in relation to my experience of putting those into practice as a bhikkhu, and how you can use those, what I learn from that, in your day-to-day activities. And I am assuming that the people I'm talking to, which, whether it's a wrong assumption or not, it doesn't matter, I'm talking to people whom are living as I was before I ordained, a relatively simple life, perhaps in a modest accommodation without such things as air conditioning, the kind of accommodation I'm used to seeing and staying in before I ordained, and visiting people in now in these countries in Asia where I live. Not perhaps the kind of accommodation I was used to back in my former life, within this life, as a businessman in my nice big house. I've long since lived in such a place. So, rightly or wrongly, I'm talking to people, addressing people in my mind of fairly simple needs and requirements. But even if you're living in a palace, this is also fine, because it is external and it's what is inside that matters. And it is inside where we build our most beautiful and lavish palace. We call this our Brahma Viharas. The Vihara is a home or really special home, accommodation, but for the Brahmins, the gods. So a home fit for gods. We build this palace within ourselves. And what is that? That is with metta, loving kindness, karuna, compassion, mudita, joy for others, and upekkha, equanimity. This is air conditioning, this is 5-star hotels, this is V8's and everything, all inside these Brahma Viharas. And that is all a monk needs. Externally, we have these rag robes which haven't changed in 2,500, and I'm going to get used to saying it, 600 and soon 67 years now. These have been the same style, made the same way, dyed the same way. And this is all we need. A razor to shave our heads and an old metal bowl to collect our food each day. A needle and cotton to sew up a hole, because if we're breaking a rule, if we let that hole go on until the next day, if it's bigger than a match head, it must be repaired before dawn the following day. Our day begins at dawn. Why? A stitch in time saves 9, my grandmother used to tell me, my nana, because it makes sense, doesn't it? I have to have a small operation. It's not so serious now, but if I didn't have it soon, it would be a big operation and it would be serious. So this is why we sew things up. Get a little hole, whether it's in your robes or in your tummy, you have it sewn up quite quickly, and then it doesn't spread, get worse. Next question. No, I've lost the last. This is from same person from another one. Maybe not. Yes, I've had that question. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. Okay, that's very in depth. Two good questions. I'm not criticizing. You don't know who you are anyway. Two very good questions, but I don't think I have time to even answer one of them. That's more of a long talks. But I will always try to answer your questions directly or via this means where possible, unless it isn't a question. But I've spoken about that already. How do I reach out you? How do I reach out to you? That's an expression I'm not used to. I think it's a modern way of how do I get hold of you, contact you, whatever. I don't think your WhatsApp works anymore. Excuse me. I do have WhatsApp, and I think it does work, but I don't use it. I use it only to call my mother every few weeks, couple of weeks. This time of year, a little bit more often than that. And sometimes we have to send documents these days, PDFs or even photographs and things like that way. But I don't use it for phone calls, put it that way. So you can email me. The email address is always under the video in the description at the end. It's like a link, you can just click it, I think, but it's englishbuddhistmonk@gmail.com. If you want to speak to me or arrange, you can arrange. Well, I don't have conversations. People will come to see me in my Vihara when there is either an opportunity for them, they're coming to offer dana, or they're just coming simply to ask some advice, and there is a two-way interaction like this. But it's been a very long time since I've had telephone conversations other than with my mother. I spent a lifetime, not just because I'm a monk, and I think that's the main reason. It's not, the Buddha didn't have phones, so it's not a Vinaya rule. It's not a moral issue that monks have phones and use them for talking, but I choose not to have telephone conversations. It is mostly Sampa Palapa on the phone, and I don't feel that I'm quite rude on the phone. I'm quite rude in real life if you came to meet me. Not meaning to be rude, but I'm abrupt and to the point. I spent 20 or maybe even 30 years on the telephone making money in a very fast moving and high pressure environment. There was no time for niceties. So it was buy, sell, shout, rude words, you know, on the phone. Not much in the way of niceties. And even when I was selling on the phone, it was very factual, to the point, and quite, in those days, some time ago, quite aggressive, manipulative, even mentalist. These skills in business are kind of almost opposed to those skills we learn in Buddhism. And you can spend a lot of your monastic life, such as me, trying to wipe out all of that stuff you learned in business, like acquisition and success and shouting at people on the phone. So I choose never to have telephone conversations, and messages to some extent are okay. An email, at least someone's got to think a little bit about it. And to people that I'm having to have frequent arrangements with, the odd message, but even those are infrequent, via WhatsApp or texting, whatever it is, I don't, is okay. But I'm not open to anyone phoning me for a chat or messaging me back and forth like this. It isn't necessary. Because you can ask me as long a question as you like, as big a question as you like by email, and I promise I will reply. Might be a short answer, but I know I won't be rude to you. But if you phone me up and you say what some of you have said or written, you were speaking, some of you have spent time thoughtfully to write to me in an email, and I'm able to read it, digest it, think about it, and reply. If you were to phone me up and say all that, I wouldn't have listened after the first few words, because I would be thinking, when are they going to stop talking? I need to not be on this phone call. So I don't know whether I've gone off the track there, but how do you get hold of me? By email in the first instance. Now, if it's really necessary, of course, then I would make arrangements with you by that means, for us to have a conversation. But I've done that once or twice since I've been a monk, and it's been a most unproductive waste of time for me to have a conversation with someone live on the telephone, because it's just about the other person wanting to really have someone to talk to. And you can do that with your Kalyanamitta, other lay people, or maybe there are monks who like to talk on the phone, but I'm not a monk who likes to talk on the phone. I'm not a monk who likes to talk at all, which is why I live alone, but it seems like maybe I'm a monk that talks a lot, because if you're only watching this, or if you have visited me and you speak English, I do talk a lot at that time, because it is the only time I talk. I don't have conversation for the rest of the day, because I live alone and the people that are around me don't normally speak my language. But the number does change. I don't think that makes any difference to people. I've had Happy New Year messages from people from all over the place, all over the world, and even though I've changed the number, so I know it's working. And I have replied the same Happy New Year back to them all. There's this exception, isn't there, on New Year's Eve to all of what I've just said. Bhante, how is Sri Lanka treating you? I'm sure I've spoken about that, apart from the lizard. Well, I don't know why you say apart from the lizard. He's not there today, but I love the lizards. I love all of these creatures. It's the most beautiful part of my life, one of them. My all beings, Kalyanamitta, not just human beings. my cat, the little lizards or geckos, the little frogs. And I think Bala Largest ate one of my little frogs, but what can you do? This is nature. The little baby frog, he's created good punya, good merit. He's kept that cat fed. That's all I can say for that. He's a dear little baby frog jumping around my room for the last couple of days. There's probably a few, not just one, but they look the same. So I think of it, I talk to it as if it's the same one. She was just looking, her ears pricked up, and she was looking and gone, just like that. And I thought, well, I hope the little frog has a happy rebirth, as I'm sure it will, because the merit goodness it's done in feeding the now Vihara cat, whom is pregnant, about to have babies and needs nourishment, and you can't make cats vegetarian, I understand. How is Sri Lanka treating me? Very, very well indeed, thank you. It's a beautiful place to be, and I've spoken of it so often, I'm not going to overindulge myself now again by telling you how wonderful the people are and how kind they are and how well supported I am. But if you just watch these videos, even just watch the shorts, you'll soon get that impression, you'll see. Which country monk live? Sri Lanka. And then actually you do write later, I know, saying, oh, you live in Sri Lanka, which city? And I live in a place called Bentota, or staying in here for the time being anyway. And you live here also, so maybe you'll be one of those that comes to visit me. But remember, it's Dharma, it's not to chat, it's to talk about your meditation, it's anything to do with Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Speculative ideas about other traditions, other religions, and things I try to avoid in real life, because that can become uncontrolled in terms of a conversational pattern, and it can go into very many directions, wormholes, rabbit holes, I don't know, it can spiral out of control. Do you have any advice how to attain a good night's sleep? I have family stresses that have made it difficult to sleep. I'm concerned about this because I have gone long periods of time without sleep to the detriment of your health. Well, I'm sorry to hear you're struggling health-wise as a result of a lack of sleep and your struggles with sleep. Now, firstly, you practice Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Keep 5 precepts. Because I have to preempt this, because answer to this question, or my suggestions for this question with that, because anything I'm saying has to be based on that foundation. Somebody saying, well, you said this but it didn't work, that's drinking a bottle of gin at night, or for people who don't know what gin is, arak or whiskey or vodka or something like this, with alcohol, or smoking marijuana or something like that, or telling lies or stealing, or having affairs, or killing insects, whatever I say, it's not going to work. Okay, so I always just preempt everything with that understanding, based on everybody keeping 5 precepts. From now on, anyway, if you want to sleep well. Then, get lots of exercise. Not running, not going to the gym, just walking. Not walking slowly, not necessarily walking meditation. There's usually somewhere you can walk to, even if it's around your block or house, or up and down the stairs if you live in a block and flats. Walk, okay? This is building up towards having better sleep, okay? If you follow what I talk about in all of these videos, you will develop the skills, the tools, and the wherewithal to stop thinking about procrastinating, dwelling on these relationships you're having with your family. By developing what I spoke of earlier, metta, loving kindness, karuna, mudita, and upekkha. I've spoken about this so much. If you were to just watch my videos one after another, that surely will make you fall asleep. it must do. But what you would find is I repeat over and over again how we practice. And to get to the sleep issue, by doing all of this, and the Buddha said this himself, the benefits are you will sleep well by practicing metta, by practicing meditation. The quick fix for you is don't try to sleep. One of the biggest hindrances to meditation is sleepiness, falling asleep when you're trying to meditate. So instead of trying to sleep, get out of bed, sit on the floor and practice meditation. Even if you sit all night without sleeping, practicing meditation, you will get tired and you will fall asleep. If you don't, that's great, because you've achieved something that none of us can. You've sat all night without getting tired. Eventually you will sleep. Now, I'm thinking, and I could be completely wrong, that your perception of sleep and not sleeping and what's making you unwell, what is going to make you unwell is worrying about it more than not sleeping. But it's often that you're trying to restrict your sleeping to certain times, to a certain pattern. You think, if I go to bed at 9 o'clock, I should fall asleep, wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Something like that. It isn't necessarily the case. None of us actually need very much sleep, and in our entire night's sleep, we only sleep properly for a short time, a couple of hours, and not even that. It's a case of finding that time. It doesn't change much throughout our lives. So, wait until you're really tired. Meditate. Go to sleep. If you still don't sleep or your night's restless, then adjust the timing. Now, if you're constrained by getting up in the morning to go to work or finishing work late, so you only have a certain amount of time, stick to just meditating in that time rather than sleeping. After a day, even a few hours, you're going to need some sleep. You'll get some sleep. And naturally, if all you're doing is sitting, doing nothing and meditating, the time you actually go and lay in your bed and sleep will be the appropriate time for your body to get the most benefit from that sleep it gets. So you won't feel tired, you won't feel ill. So stop worrying about it, stop trying to sleep, instead try to meditate. And I won't say it's guaranteed, but most people trying to meditate are falling asleep most of the time. It's the biggest problem with trying to meditate. That and wanting things, sensual desire, which is really also wanting sleep, wanting not to be meditating. So this is very helpful. Just practice meditation. And if you're new to meditation, watch these videos, how to sit, how to meditate. How to meditate for a long time will help you, because that'll help you get really bored. And maybe don't use your phone for Dharma talks or guided meditations if it's going to distract you and make you be using a device. Try and keep your night space clear of all of these things. This is the worst hindrance. This is the seventh hindrance. It's a fetter. It's an everything bad we can see. It's Mara. All of the negatives of Buddhism, sums it up, one of these things. And it's certainly not conducive to sleep. So if you go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, make sure you've put this down a few hours before. And don't think about it until the next day. Of course, you might have an alarm set on it to wake you up. I appreciate that. If you can avoid that, even better. But then even so, awake for an hour before you touch it again, if you can. This will help you sleep. It isn't your relationship with your family. It's your relationship with yourself. We all have external factors governing our emotions, both good and bad. All of these are detrimental to sleep and not conducive to well-being. But this is what Buddhism is about, is understanding that all of this is just seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and then thinking about it, making judgments. And we learn not to make judgments, not to attach to the things we like, and not to push away the things we don't like, but to be equanimous, developing these Brahma Viharas. I hope that helps you. That's rather long. And I think actually, as that I've left there with three questions which are quite long answers, or most likely to be quite long answers. They're quite long questions. So I shall leave those for now. I hope there's something useful there for you. If so, please use it, and if not, just let it go. I will conclude my blah 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 now, and let the beach people know that I've finished blah blah blahing. They will know because they're all watching. I can see them out of the corner of my eye, and I can see why they think monks blah 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 because well, don't we just? So it is just that, isn't it? Blah blah blah. Thank you for watching. Until next time, be happy and stay well.